guys, I'm Si and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. Of course, on the channel we've got lots of recorded and live shows from football, MMA, mental health, conspiracy theories, TV, films, and anything else you can think of. And we also recently launched a new cricket series, which is myself, West Indian batsman Kieran Powell, and ex-Glamorgan batsman Nye Norman. And each week we are joined by a new guest. Last week we were joined by West Indian fast bowler and Middlesex fast bowler Miguel Cummins. And next episode we are joined by Ashes winner Simon Jones, which is going to be a really interesting show, and I'm really looking forward to that one. And of course we have the live Andy Campbell show Monday, where we have a new guest each week. We recently had Emil Heskey, Graham Kavanagh, Danny Gabardon, and many others. We've got Derek Brazil coming up, and a few others which I'm not allowed to talk about yet. And of course we have the Friday Championship show live, 7 o'clock, where we talk about just the Sky Bet Championship. Always a lot of fun. And today, after I spent probably a good portion of Monday's show with Emil Heskey and Andy Campbell talking all about English football and 5-1 against Germany and all this, I am delighted to talk to TalkSports Welsh football correspondent and one of the co-founders of Eat Sleep Media, Mr. Laurence Mora. How are you, my friend?
Oh, mate, I'm really, really good. I'm excited about the cricket show you've got coming up as well. I mean, it's been not having any cricket during this COVID situation has been just horrible. Seeing it come back has been so good. Seeing the West Indies give us a right good going over in the first test wasn't great, but yeah, it sounds like you got some great guests. So I'm going to be looking forward to watching that, mate. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a new one. So I had the most recent show I recorded with them. Obviously, it was only me and Kieran, who's West Indian, and then our guest was also a West Indian fast bowler, and I was and England were not doing very well, so that was a fun one for me as we were talking about that. But no, it's been really fun. I've wanted to do a cricket show for a while because I used to play it myself, and it's something which I'm quite passionate about. However, it's been finding someone who's able to sort of do it, whether it's bi-weekly or weekly, and then being able to get guests. But luckily, as the channel has grown, I've found it easier to get guests, which is, such is life, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, having Simon Jones on will be awesome as well, because what a player he was in his day. What a player. Like that 2005 Ashes series, and he's kind of the, I suppose if you're being unkind, you'd say almost a little bit of the forgotten man. But wow, when he came on with his reverse swing, what a player! And took some incredibly important wickets. And then what happened with his injuries and what have you was just so sad, really.
Yeah, it's really, he didn't have a very long England career, which is such a shame because he was so talented. And one of the questions I want to ask him actually is if he's interested in kind of helping coach the younger players, because I think he's got so much to offer with his skill, just with the reverse swing and the things he was able to do with the ball. The only other English bowler who I think comes close to having that skill set with reverse swing is probably Darren Gough. I don't think anyone from an English point of view has ever been able to really get that consistency of reverse swing, and it's a shame that Simon had such a bad injury that his England career was cut short. But while he was there, he was very special. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. It's going to be it's going to be really cool. And I spoke to Adam Hollyoak the other day for one of my other series, My Story, which is basically where we just take athletes or actors and people through their sort of whole life and career. And he's got such an interesting and obviously sad story at times, but it's also, there's kind of a positive side to it as well, the way he's come through it and what he's been up to since, and he's a lot of positivity in the things that he's getting up to. So I'm kind of looking forward to dropping that one as well.
Yeah, looking forward to watching it.
So obviously you've been working hard. I've seen on your LinkedIn and your social media, you've been back to it recently after the COVID which has kind of slowed everyone down. It's been, I got to say, from a podcast point of view, it's been quite good for me because people have been home, so they've been easier to kind of pin down for interviews and shows. But obviously, for people like yourself who predominantly travel and go out and about for their work, it must have been quite a difficult period.
Yeah, so it's kind of been a bit of both, really. On the one hand, obviously, all of the TalkSport work just kind of disappeared in a flash as soon as all the league stopped. That finished. So that was kind of a bit scary in the first instance because you're not sure what's going to happen, and taking sport completely out of the way of it. It was my first pandemic, so just kind of figuring out what to do with all that. But then on the flip side, Eat Sleep Media has continued. We've continued doing content for FC Cymru, which we do for the FAW, and as you've said, getting guests for that has been very, very straightforward. Everybody was available, funnily enough, and the other thing was fantastic viewing figures. We kind of flipped how we did it quite early, and we've gone online doing a lot of Zoom calls, Zoom edits, video casts, which we then take and we turn from video casts into podcasts as well. The FAW will be launching a podcast series as well soon, which will have taken our video casts we've done in lockdown and turned them into podcasts. So on the creative front, it's been really interesting, and actually we've managed to keep working. We've kept producing content, and the viewing figures have been absolutely phenomenal. So sort of blown us away, really. Well, on the one hand, great to be back in empty stadiums and having that, but on the other hand, it's been a really interesting experience for Eat Sleep Media.
So how did sort of Eat Sleep Media come about? How did it begin? Where did the idea come from?
So Eat Sleep Media kind of rolls into my time as becoming freelance. So sort of 5 years ago this summer, actually, I left Sky. I'd been working at Sky News Radio for 10 years, or close to 10 years. It felt like I needed a change. I wanted to bring the kids back over the border for schooling and all that kind of stuff. And so we as a family decided to come back. And it just meant that I had to then start again and restart the career. And I was always very conscious that it's a career which can kind of come and go quite quickly. You can have your TalkSport work and you can have your other work from other places, but if you don't diversify your work, then, when things like global pandemics hit, you're left without sort of revenue streams, and you're left without money and a career. So that kind of always made me kind of feel quite nervous, and I wanted to do so. I've always wanted to do something for myself. So slowly but surely, and I wouldn't say I just had this grand plan of Eat Sleep Media. It was slowly but surely this plan kind of took shape. To start with, it was to start a Welsh football channel, because I felt that Welsh football was terribly ignored by commercial entities. The BBC do what they do well. S4C take and grab the domestic football, and it's a little bit of a carve up. ITV don't do anything. They've now got Beth going around doing a few bits and pieces, which is great. She's been good for them, but in the main, they don't do anything. They don't show any football. They don't show any highlights of the domestic leagues. The radio stations don't try and challenge the BBC in the slightest, and it absolutely drives me up the wall. So I was like, let's do something about that, and that's kind of where the idea was born. And then since then, it's taken lots of different kind of routes. But that was the initial idea sort of 5 years ago, and how it just got going.
Yeah, you mentioned there about ITV and S4C. Obviously, like when I was younger, I remember watching like Soccer Sunday on ITV, and they used to have the highlights of all the Welsh teams, and they'd go from Cardiff and Swansea and Wrexham, and they would go through and they would show you the Merthyr highlights. And so as a kid, when we didn't have Sky and things like that, I would be able to watch Welsh football and the Welsh teams, who I'd always follow. As a kid, I'd always look out for, because they're the teams which I guess as a kid you see when you're driving around with your parents. You go through Swansea, or you go through Cardiff, or Merthyr, or whatever. So they were the teams I enjoyed watching more on an ITV than I would maybe like Match of the Day. Was too late for me to watch at that age. And like you say, they're completely dried up. I can't even remember the last time ITV really did anything from a domestic football point of view. And
that's kind of happened across the regions as well, hasn't it? You know,
yes.
It's not just like, we're ditching Wales, you know, like Points West used to do stuff in Bristol, and then you could go around the country, and you've got different places, and all those sort of local football shows have dried up because they want to do it as a central hub, and you know, financially, maybe that makes sense to them, but I think the people in those areas are being cheated.
Yeah, what you lose is focus, so that the only focus you get on particular teams or leagues, even like particularly the lower leagues, is you just kind of get little bits and pieces on Sky or like Quest, I think, is the Championship and the EFL shows now, but you don't get anything which is kind of localized to areas or clubs, which is obviously what fans and people of those areas want. Which is, I think, is probably why you've seen such a growth in kind of like fan channels and things like this on YouTube, which can have positives and negatives.
Well, I was going to say, it's good for me and you, mate.
Well, that's it. Yeah,
so where one door closes, opportunity knocks. You know, so I think it's I think the proliferation of the media as well was kind of like really interesting to me at that point, and watching these fan channels kind of springing up, and I was like, yeah, that could definitely work in Wales, 100%. And in fact, it needs to work in Wales because there's no commercial entity stepping up to the plate to and also I just want to be clear, I'm not slagging off the BBC coverage or the S4C coverage, because they do what they do, and they do it as they've always done it, and they do it really well. And if it wasn't for them, like, how would I have ever listened to Wales games in the past on the radio, or you know, and sort of, you know, from afar in London, you know, check back in. So certainly not doing them down, but competition is needed, and different forms of media are needed for different people, and I think that's where the commercial sector has let Wales down. I think Wales Online, you know, very hard-working journalists that go there, but they had such an opportunity to do kind of what we're doing. You know, they had that ability to go in and do that with their size of audience and make it pay, but they've totally missed the boat. They just don't get it, or they are hamstrung by the Trinity Mirror, who are the sort of, you know,
central the owners.
This is the way you do it in Yorkshire. This is the way you do it in Wales. This is the way you do it, etc., etc. So it could be a bit of that. But
I mean, if you look at like Wales Online's websites, and then you go to, I don't know, Bristol Live, or you know, where they're all completely identical in the way they're laid out and the way they're portrayed. And I guess I can see the benefits to that in some ways. But also you lose that kind of individuality and creativity of the, you know, I'm sure at Wales Online or Bristol Live, I'm sure there's some really creative people and journalists who would love to do podcasts or digital media and create, you know, interesting content, but like you say, maybe they're not able to or are not allowed to do those things. And like even with radio, I think, like, if it wasn't for BBC Radio Wales, you know, I would have been able to listen to Cardiff City games and things like this over the years. But it would be nice if, like, for instance, the reason we started the Andy Campbell show at this, you know, the start, it's kind of evolved into 2 shows now. But initially it was a Championship show because me and Andy were both such big fans of the Championship, and we felt it was very underappreciated for what it is. I find it's the most enjoyable football to watch. I find of all football around the world, all the football I watch, which is a lot, I enjoy the Championship the most because it's so unpredictable. And you know, you look at some of the players which are playing in the Championship now, they are players who are very, very good footballers. You know, they're people like Wayne Rooney, and you get a lot of international footballers. It's not like, you know, 15 years ago where the Championship was long ball football, and you know, that's evolved into something completely different now. And even now I feel like the Championship does get, you know, it gets its coverage on Sky or whatnot, but I do think it's massively undervalued because, you know, the fact that the EFL show, if you like, or the Championship show is on Quest or whatever it's on now, that kind of shows to me that it's really undervalued, because that should be on one of the highlight shows, should be on one of the 5 terrestrial main channels for me.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. 100% agree. I know that as a sort of kind of insight into that, the Quest just undercut everybody's bidding in the last one, and so that's kind of where they went with it. The AFL, they went with the money, but I don't know. You kind of feel that if you go with a terrestrial channel, you get more than money.
Yes.
The money is important, but the coverage and the widespread of the tournament, the fact that people can go and watch it, we're probably going to make an argument for cricket as well, and I'm sure you will when you speak to the guys. But that opportunity for people to see it on a terrestrial channel where they know it's going to be, and it's in there. That said, I thought the BBC's last effort of the Football League show was nothing short of terrible.
It was just not good.
But yeah, certainly for myself, because obviously as for TalkSport on my patch at the moment, Swansea, Bristol City, and Cardiff are all Championship clubs. So I watch a lot of Championship football. I think you get some fantastic games. Lots of blood and thunder, and a little bit of thud and blunder, as the saying goes. So it's an really interesting division, and as you see it coming to a conclusion now. I was at Bristol City against Stoke last night, and it was both teams going for it. Goodness me, if either of them had a striker who could actually score, then it would have been a real goal fest and a proper game. But they had to rely on 2 centre halves to score the goals last night. But Cardiff for them, mate, he must be absolutely buzzing with that. That's just one foot in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and it's changed so much in the last few weeks. It's been up and down, and when you came back from lockdown, Cardiff won a couple straight off the bounce, and they played well, and you thought, all right, here we go, nice big. We're going to be the team who goes on a run into the playoffs, and then they kind of stuttered, and then all of a sudden didn't look as good as they had in the previous couple of games. But they do seem to. I thought they were pretty good against Derby. I got to be honest. I didn't think Derby were great, but I thought Cardiff were pretty good. But the Championship's just so unpredictable. Is like at certain points, we've kind of tipped on the show that we thought Blackburn were going to be the side to really make a run for it. They've got some great players, and then all of a sudden they've got kind of gone to pieces after the break. Derby made a really late run for it, but I think their start to the season was so poor that they just had too much to do.
Yeah.
And then you look at Wigan, who were, gone into administration, not quite sure what's going to happen with points deductions and things, and then they go and win 8-0. And actually, their form has been incredible since they've come back from the break. It's just exciting to watch.
Keeps everyone interested right to the end, doesn't it? Really
100%.
Interested right to the end. And as you say, some terrific players, It's Cardiff's wide boys, and watching when Nathaniel Mendez-Lang is in full flight, or IU down at Swansea, or Bristol City, Patterson, and not Vyman so much. He runs around a lot. So when you see those guys in full flight and showing off their skills, it's a wonderful sight. And let's hope we can get another Premier League side. But if we don't, no biggie. I love going to watch Championship football.
Yeah, me and Andy will have to have a very interesting conversation if, for instance, Middlesbrough get relegated to League One and Cardiff get promoted to the Premier League. What will happen to the Championship show with if both our teams are out with there? But no, I think we both enjoy it so much. I got to be honest, from a content point of view, I just enjoy speaking to people and making content, and I'm making such a vast amount of it and a different subjects. I've been really lucky with guests and people that I've got to just meet and speak to just so many different people with different views. I've got to speak to some of my heroes, and it's just been kind of cool. And the Championship show has just evolved. So when the COVID-19 came along, we kind of thought, right, there's no championship, so do we just kind of keep going on, and me and you will just talk about the football news for the week, which is you're going to, after a couple of weeks, you're kind of just talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, no, we'll just bring in a guest each week, and I think what people like about it is that it's because it's live. It's like they've got instant kind of access to the people. They can ask a question, see their reaction, listen to their reaction, and I like to think that we do it quite well. And I like to think as well it's something different. Like you don't see that anywhere really. So
Yeah,
I guess that's what you're trying to do. But
yeah, sorry.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say that's kind of, you've touched on so many reasons there why we started E.C.E Media. That was it was all of those things sort of rolled into one really. The fact is, you want to do your best by the product you love and the thing that you love. That's your hobby. That is that if you can make your hobby your job and you're earning, then it means a lot to you. And if you can't, then you just enjoy it anyway. So yeah, a lot of those reasons you just touched on were exactly why we got E.C.E Media started.
So, just kind of, I'll come back to that. What do you feel about the Welsh national team at the moment? Obviously, we were all set for the Euros, and then they got moved back. Giggs made a bit of a rocky start, and for me, I feel as if he had a very similar kind of starting period to Chris Coleman, whereby Chris Coleman tried to, for obvious reasons, tried to keep playing the way Gary Speed's side had played, with the same players and the same tactics. And it was only when he kind of decided, no, I'm going to do it my way and I'm going to do my tactics and my formation, that things kind of fell into place for him. And I feel like Giggs was in a similar boat, whereby he almost initially was trying to continue, obviously, for obvious reasons, again, because it'd been successful, Chris Coleman's work. And it was only then, maybe when he decided, no, I'm going to go with these young players and I'm going to try and build my own side for the future, that I think things did start to fall into place for him. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, to an extent. I think Ryan Giggs came into it with. I think we've been on a journey as Welsh football fans. We've sort of been on an evolutionary journey with Giggs, because he's obviously a new coach. It was his first job. It was his first opportunity to be the main man. And I think we've been on the learning curve with him. And that's why at times it's felt like it's like, oh my God, what happened there? Or, the elation of like, that is fantastic. And then the next game, you're like, what happened to that team that played 90 minutes ago? Where have they gone? So, and I think that is when you sort of sit back in the cold idea and try and analyze it. I think that's where you, as a manager and as a new coach, I think that was the journey he was on. So I think when he came in, I think you're right, he definitely wanted to keep that kind of Chris Coleman defensive solidity, but he wanted to crowbar on top of it. He had these ideals of really kind of fast attacking players and what have you. And I was lucky enough to go to the coaches conference that the FAW Trust do every year, and he did a bit of a talk there. And he basically kind of looked back on the China Cup and his first kind of few months in charge of Wales, and he was talking about how during the World Cup qualification under Chris Coleman that we just missed out on against Ireland in the last match. So we didn't have, I think it was one offside in the entire qualifying campaign. And apparently Sam Vokes had said to him, yeah, that's because I timed my runs well, Gaffer. He's like, yeah, okay, well, maybe we're not making that ball in enough. So his point was that he wanted to turn defence into attack a lot quicker, and he wanted players that were able to do that. And I think he was stuck then slightly in between of the players that Chris Coleman had that could do that, the likes that have stuck around of Bale and Ben Davis, Ramsey, Joe Allen, those type of players who could get it and do it. And then the younger players who we could get to do it and had been coached like that and had the pace and the power to be able to do it, but not the experience. And then he had the likes of Andy King and great stalwarts like Dave Edwards, and who've done fantastically well for us. But we owe so much thanks for everything they did in getting Euro 2016 and all the things that happened there and being part of that squad. But he needed to move them on. And I think he showed his ruthless side, because he definitely showed, when he took a lot of those players out and unceremoniously, all of a sudden they found themselves on the bench or not even in the squads. And I thought then we saw the Republic of Ireland game, and we were like, where we battered them 4-1, and we were like, wow. This team, this is the way we want to play. Bale was playing as a sort of false nine. We had Brooks and Wilson, Ramsey in the 10 role, Ampadu was alongside Allen. We're like, wow, this is a team, yeah. And then that just didn't quite work, and it was partly injuries, partly loss of form for some players. The squad was inexperienced, so he was getting fluctuations in performances. And then, as you say, I think he kind of then just... I think he had to then adapt to what we had. And I'll come on to it in a minute, but I think the Kiefer Moore thing obviously was hugely important to how he wanted to structure the team towards the end of the campaign, and it got us rolling and it gave us structure. But I think one of the most important changes of the entire campaign that made it was Rob Page coming into the setup as coach in the summer, last summer 2019, when Oshan Roberts moved on to Morocco. And that is no criticism of Osh in the slightest. I just think Rob Page added a different dimension to the coaching staff and the coaching thinking. And I think that really helped Ryan with the team, with motivating, and with putting together a structure in which to play from.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's just about having the right people in the right roles, and Oshan Roberts over the last probably 8 years or so, 10 years, has really built a reputation as one of the best coaches, assistant managers in the world of football. But there comes a time when it's the right time to move on and try new things, and that's with anything, isn't it? It's not necessarily just predominantly football. It can be just in life. Sometimes a change of scenery is needed, and I feel like maybe it was the right time for Oshan Roberts to leave. It was the right time to bring in some fresh ideas.
Yeah, because it was like what you were saying about the Coleman and trying to stay with what they'd achieved. And obviously Osh was really proud of that, as he should be, really proud of what they'd achieved, and probably wanted Ryan to continue that and how they wanted to play. They had certain ideas on that, but it wasn't quite maybe matching with how Ryan wanted to do things. And look, I'm surmising here, but I think that bringing Robert Page in as he's a trusted friend of Ryan Giggs, but he's also a man who won't be a yes man as well. So he will have brought his own ideas to the table. He was able to give Ryan a real insight into some of the younger players that were coming through the 21s. So like Giggs suddenly picking Joe Morrell out of Lincoln City, where he was on loan in League One, and chucking him in for those qualifiers. I mean, I was going, wow, okay. I've watched Joe come through the ranks at Wales and at Bristol City, and he is a terrific young player, but has he got the experience for this? And he absolutely monstered it, didn't he? Absolutely monstered it. So, and then there was kind of bringing in Mepham and Roden as the centre-half pairing and all the rest of it. So I think Rob Page was really important in that. And Rob Page is a little bit old school. He will get in your face and sort of rile you up and get you going and screaming on the sidelines, whereas Osh, Albert Stuvenberg and Giggs are a little bit, they're more on the quieter side, more analytical, that kind of thing. So I think Page adds a little bit of oomph in there as well.
Yeah, and I think as well the thing which people need to remember is with so many young players, you are going to get inconsistency. Yeah. It's just natural that players, they're still on a big steep learning curve, particularly when you pick players who are on loan at like lower league clubs. You're going to have that even more so. But I thought it was a big risk by Giggs to bring in, those players. But it paid off obviously because they all did so exceptionally well. And Wales, look, I said to my friend the other day, I really just wish that Ramsey and Giggs were about 3 years younger than what they are, because the young talent coming through for Wales is just incredible. But you always feel like those two are just so important and catalysts for everything which Wales do and have done over the last few years. And in many ways, I feel like Aaron Ramsey is more important to the team than Gareth Bale is, if that makes sense. And I think that showed in the Euros when he was out of the semi-final. I thought, I always, maybe it's like the football kind of fan in me, and it's my heart speaking over my head. But I still believe that if Ramsey had played, we would have beaten Portugal in that semi-final. But
I do.
There we go.
I agree. I think I think they complement each other really well. So when Ramsey doesn't play, we don't have a sort of a player who's breaking from midfield who can break the lines. Now, as soon as when he doesn't play and the ball gets played into Gareth, he's always doubled up on, where he can move around and he can pull the defenders about. But they're going, yeah, it's fine. We can keep two on you. We can manage the situation like that. When you've got Ramsey, he breaks the lines and puts players under pressure and turns players so well and so easily with those kind of late runs that all of a sudden Bale finds himself with space. And as soon as he's got space, he will destroy teams, which is why he's the leading scorer of all time on the men's side of the game. So I think a great example of that was then against Russia. Actually, I suppose the Hal Robson-Kanu goal as well against Slovakia, but the goal against Russia where Ramsey committed players, brought them in, played out to Bale finishes, and it's that kind of role, and that's the dimension that Aaron Ramsey brings to the team, and you've now got some young players like David Brooks coming in who can do that, and obviously in his own way, in a slightly different way, you've got Dan James on the other side who can add a bit of pace and fire to his game, but yeah, I think he is a key part to it, Aaron Ramsey. But the young players that you talk about, and I actually think this is going to be really, really good for Wales, is that you're just starting to see a little bit of a stockpile of players coming up through the ranks. So
yes.
We do a lot of work in and around the 17s and 19s and 21s, as well as the first team. And we're just seeing that these players are starting to bottleneck. And I think Paul Bowden, it might be a bit different this autumn because I think there's going to be 8 international games over this autumn period, crammed into those 3 weeks, which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way.
Silly,
but let's not go there. So they'll have the Nations League and 2 forced friendlies going on in the autumn, which is crazy. But yeah, so they've got. So I think Giggs will need kind of a bigger squad to be able to work with that, but. The under-21s have got 3-4 matches. They're sitting second on level points with Germany at the moment in their group. Got some really talented boys like Brennan Johnson, Ben Cabango, and they would have already been fast-tracked into the first team if it wasn't for the fact that we've already got lots of young players fast-tracked into the first team. And then you've got the 19s coming up through, which is like Nico Williams' age group. And some terrific players. Sam Bowen, Jason Bowen's son, Cardiff, is coming through in that team. Really, really good central midfielder. Keenan Patton, a young lad at Bristol City called Sam Pearson. These players that we would have been accelerating into the 21s. Now they're staying at their age groups, and then the 18s coming below them aren't getting a game. So Wales are introducing an under-18s team for the first time. Matty Jones, the old Swansea a midfielder, and Leeds and Leicester midfielder. He's taken over that team. And then you've got a 17s as well with some really talented boys. I think Robbie Savage's son is in the under-17s, Charlie Savage, who's with Manchester United. So you've got all these teams now. The competition to step up through them is really fierce, and that's a position that we've never known, not in my lifetime as a Wales football fan. You've never seen those youth teams packed. So the future is really exciting. And those players are now going to have to kind of bide their time in those age groups before bursting into the scene. Whereas before, as I said, they would have got thrown in there like the Ethan Ampadu's and Dave Brookses and those sort of players.
Oh, yeah. 100% they would have. Okay, so just to finish off, I'm going to ask you this question. You can keep it as brief or as detailed as you'd like. Which Welsh player from the kind of new crop, from Ampadu and Matondo down to the teams you just discussed, which player excites you the most and why?
Good question. So there's a couple of players who I really think. So Ethan Ampadu obviously is such an incredible talent, absolute beast of a midfielder, and maybe even will end up at centre back rather than in midfield. Joe Roden, I think Bango coming through. They're going to be kind of the mainstay of the team, I think, for the next decade. Dave Brooks, I think, is going to be sensational. I think he's going to get a big move this summer from Bournemouth, and I think he's going to be sensational. But if we're looking at a kind of couple of outsider names, there's a young lad at Manchester United called Dylan Levitt, and he can play. Oh my days, that boy can play. He's got that kind of reading of the game. Quick one-touch passing, can keep the tempo going, can long-range passing is sensational, and also scores a few as well. So he is a really, really exciting talent. The trouble is that he's just at that 19 age. He's not physically developing as quickly as his peers. He's quite a slight lad, pretty small. So you just kind of hope that he gets the opportunities in the right places, and it's maybe he's one of those that looks at a move abroad, maybe goes off to the Dutch leagues or something like that to actually kind of develop his technique and allow himself to develop physically. So he's a really interesting one. I think he's going to be a star if he gets the right moves. But it's that age group, isn't it? That 19, 20, 21, and I'm sure you guys talk about it in terms of loans and all that kind of stuff. It's not an exact science, but yeah, I think Dylan Levitt could be our new Joe Allen. I don't want to throw that on him too early, but yeah, he could be that one to sort of take Joe's mantle on in the in future.
It's exciting time to be a Welsh football fan, no doubt. There's so many players, it's unheard of. So I know you've got to go. So tell me,
we got a little bit longer. That's fine.
Right, okay. I will. How do you think Rabbi Matonda's doing? And what do you think when he moved to Schalke? Did it surprise you?
Yeah, it surprised me that he went quite so early. I thought he was still pretty young to make that move. And I know Manchester City think a lot of him, and they were trying to persuade him to stay. I kind of get why he made the move, apart from the fact that it's worth absolute millions to him. I think that is a better idea than Ethan Ampadu going out on loan. And the reason I think that is a better idea for him to have actually made the whole move is that while Ethan's at Leipzig, he's only there for a year. So Leipzig are basically going, well, that's fine. If you can come in and you can be our top performer, then we'll play you. But you're only a loan player, so it's not really up to us to develop you on the pitch as a player. We're here challenging for the title. Whereas for Schalke, they've invested in Rabbi, and so it is in their interest to make him as good as they possibly can and get him on the pitch as much as they possibly can, because they'll want to sell him on for a profit, so it benefits the player. So I think in terms of minutes and in terms of a sale, I think it was the right move for Rabbi rather than taking loan deals. Unfortunately, he's got to Schalke, and they've not been the most stable of clubs over the last since his arrival, really, which is a bit of a shame. But I think he's got a lot more to go, and I think it's been a great learning curve for him. And what a brave kid as well, and he is a lovely lad as well. Like off the pitch, he is an absolute star. So I think he'll do fine, because I think his heart's in it and he wants to be the best he possibly can. I think overall it will turn out to be a good move for him. I was a little bit surprised at how young he was to make that move.
Yeah, I mean, he's made 27 appearances, I think, this year, or 28, which is pretty good, for such a young lad in a foreign country to go out and play that many games. I find it frustrating that you've got this Cardiff lad who's obviously such a good footballer, was at Cardiff in the youth team, and somehow, for whatever reason, he's ended up at Man City, and then he's gone to Schalke. Like, Cardiff are desperately crying out for the players coming through the academy, like perhaps they used to have, and then you see these Welsh lads and these Cardiff boys elsewhere. It can be frustrated as a Cardiff fan.
Oh, I can totally understand that, yeah. And that's why they need to get the likes of Sam Bowen through, you know. I think it's quite an important season for them. I know they've let Keenan Patton go out to Penybont to go and get some experience. And like that little clutch of players, there's about 4 or 5 of them in that age group of the 19s, and they really need to be brought through. But they need a proper plan to bring them through. Like, for all the good that Neil Warnock did for you guys and getting you up and all the rest of it, you know, like, he had absolutely zero interest in getting those kids into the first team. Zero interest.
Oh, yeah.
And that's never been his way. So if you're employing him, then you must know that if you've done your proper due diligence on him. So I think that's kind of key to it. Neil Harris, from what I understand, is, you know, he knows that the club want him to do that. I think he's a bit more of a believer in young players, although, you know, the one that really frustrates me is Cameron Cox. I mean, I was watching him playing for Wales under 20s, and go, what a player he is. There were stories about Man City watching him, and then all of a sudden he's now without a club. You go, well, what happened there? What happened in that in between period? And I think what happened was that he just did not get enough game time at a first team game time at a crucial period, and so that shows mismanagement in some ways, you know. So yeah, I'm sure people on the inside may have a slightly different view of it, but then the way it's been restructured and the youth system's being, you know, turned around again, then it
makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Feel it is a bit of a problem.
So we had Mehmet Dalman on the live show before, and you know, we asked him about that, and he said the club are committed to trying to get, you know, these homegrown players through the academy setup, and they've restructured the academy, and yes, you know, it's good to hear that, but ultimately, like for instance with Cox, he was on the bench a lot but never getting on, and then even when there was opportunities to give him some game time, whether it was a game where you're up or whether it was a game where there wasn't much on and you could, you know, give him a start, he never really got that opportunity. And then you've always got this kind of what if then, because he, like you say, he's without a club now. Now, what if he had played 10, 15 first team games? Would he have developed, and would the club have had a different opinion of his ability, or his, you know, you don't know if there's any other issues which caused the parting of ways, but from a purely football point of view, he looked more than capable of being a player who could come through, and now he's, you know, I just hope that he does find another club sooner rather than later and doesn't end up kind of one of those talents which
just never quite made it.
Yeah, and it would be a shame because he looks like he's got, you know, he certainly looks like he's good enough to be, you know, somewhere. To not have a club at all seems strange to me.
Agreed.
Okay, what have you got coming up on Eat Sleep Media, and where can the people find it?
All right, so A.C.E. Media we have got on the go at the moment. We're going to be out filming for Sport Wales over the next few weeks as sport kind of gets going again in across Wales. Then we're going to be covering a few sports. I think we've got some golf, some swimming to do, and a couple of other bits and pieces. So Welsh Sport Insider, which is a show we do for Sport Wales, that's going to be up and running soon. We've got some FC Cymru episodes coming up which haven't been done yet. One of them actually on age grade football in Wales. So we've got Joe Morrell and Rob Page and Matty Jones, Rob Edwards and Paul Bowden all on that. So that'll be on the FAW channels. So that's FC Cymru on the FAW channels. We have just launched a women's football platform called Ballers. So that is in the moment in its very, very infancy. So we've got some video stuff going out on that. If you go and check out Proper Ballers on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, which I don't understand, then you'll find some fantastic women's football content there. We've got some stuff with some Welsh girls. We've got some stuff with some English and Scottish. So it's a British-wide show, that one. What else have we got? We got The Accidental Startup, which is a podcast that we've got going at the moment. So that can be found on Twitter and all good podcast channels providers. And Welsh football fans will be back looking at all of the kind of huge autumn that we've got coming up internationally. I mean, on the one hand, it's ridiculous. We've got 8 internationals. On the other hand, it's bloody brilliant.
Yeah,
because we've got so much to talk about and so much to do. So really happy with that, and looking forward to getting that back up and running. And now you've shown me stream and this, I think I might be going to take this back to the guys and go in. Listen, we might need to do this. This looks awesome. So thank you very much, Si.
That's all right.
You sparked the imagination for me today.
It's really, really simple to use as well, which is even better. But I'm going to definitely check out the women's football one because, just very quickly, my son used to train for Cardiff on a Friday night, and afterwards you had the girls' teams used to train, who were slightly older, and they were just incredible. Some of the stuff they could do. I used to stay behind and I'd watch them play because they were just so good. So I'm looking forward to that series in particular. Guys, you can check out all our podcasts and series. We've got so many different series coming up and already in motion. We have live MMA and football shows, and we've got recorded My Story, unscripted and uncensored, and just general interviews as well. And there's actors, fighters, bands, rappers, all sorts, footballers, boxers. If you could think of it, I probably had them on. Doctors, nurses, had them all on. But youtube.com/ACE check it out, and of course all the usual podcast and radio apps as well. Laurence, thank you for joining me, my friend. I really enjoyed the chat.
So I had an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to the cricket stuff. I'm going to be tuning in for the Simon Jones chat.
Indeed. Cheers, mate, and I'll speak to you soon.